Guys, today we are going to finish up this chapter and hopefully get right into the next one. I don't know if we'll do that today. It'll be a shorter chapter. Tomorrow, or a shorter lecture, I should say. Tomorrow, you guys will have your chapter reading quiz. So make sure that you read through um, uh, chapter 14 for that. Make sure that you guys are well aware of what you need. I do have a short video, you guys, for today, simply talking about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is an interesting topic, so I'm going to play that. It's about 7 minutes. Obviously, credit due to those individuals who put that together. Let's go ahead and pray real quick, and we'll get started. Lord God, I just want to thank you for this group. Thank you, Lord, for the few that are determined and have been keeping up with these video lectures and really been trying to absorb this material in preparation for that quiz for that AP exam. Lord, I just pray that you help all of us to strive towards that, towards completion of that, towards threes or better. Lord, so that they get credit for the crazy year that we've had. I know it's not been ideal. I know it's been strange, but Lord, it's we still got a lot of information in, Lord, and I still think that they worked really hard on this. And I would love to see them all succeed in doing well, getting that 3 or better, and getting the credit for this class. Lord, I pray that you bless all of them as they are at home with their families. May this be a joyful time to be able to spend extra time, Lord, with the ones that they love. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right. So we left off, we were talking about these guys right here, pesticides and pharmaceuticals. We've already covered this, so I want to go on to oil. When we think about water contamination, oil always seems to be the front runner. I think I may have mentioned before, about 2-3 years ago, during the I think it was the Exxon Valdez Gulf spill, which was, I think at the time, I think it still is the biggest in history. I went down to Texas about a year later. It was an entire year after the spill, and I was still, wherever you went, you would walk on the beach, and the bottoms of your feet would be black. And it's because the sand had absorbed, literally the sand had a black tinge to it, and there was these waves of kind of oil that had permeated into the sand. And there would be these little sort of splotches of almost like thick oil pads that had kind of solidified, I guess, over the course of time. And they would stick to the bottom of your foot, and you'd have to like peel them off. And it was really not the best experience that I've ever had on the beach, but it showed. That spill happened miles away from South Padre Island where I was staying, but it shows that it doesn't matter, that because of the global circulation of water, that oil will get wherever it wants to go, usually caused by the gyres of the ocean, and you'll find oil everywhere. And that definitely had an impact on the tourism down there. It definitely had an impact on the wildlife. These are just the reason these get so much play on social media and just media sites as a whole is because of the drastic impact that they have. There are a lot of efforts right now. They've created now bacteria that can eat away at this oil. They've gotten, your book highlights a sponge that can absorb 50% of its weight in oil. There's lots of things that we have developed. But honestly, I think that the best way, we're never gonna cut our dependence on oil entirely. But if we can limit it, if we can minimize it, right now there are hundreds. I just read this the other day. There are maybe not hundreds, but there are dozens of fully loaded oil tankers sitting in the ocean because there's no port that will buy their oil. Because the oil consumption is down so much. The United States being one of the biggest consumers, we don't want the oil right now. That's why you can go and you can get gas. I'm sure you guys have all experienced this. Hopefully you're enjoying this. You can get gas at a price level that I haven't seen since I was in junior high. Not even kidding. I've only seen this low gas price one time in my life. That's not true. That was the norm at that time. But then it slowly went up, and I haven't seen it under $2 probably since I was in high school. And now we're at like I just filled up. We're at like 175, something like that. So, excuse me. It's crazy. So all these tankers are just sitting out there, and they don't have anywhere to go because they're full with oil, and nobody wants that petroleum. Nobody wants that crude oil. So one of the things that happened after the Exxon Valdez and the Deepwater Horizon, which the Deepwater Horizon was an oil drill, the Exxon Valdez was an oil tanker. But the tanker, after the Exxon Valdez, they said that every tanker now had to be double walled, so you had to put another layer of steel on it. ExxonMobil paid $1 billion in damages for this. I mean, it was a huge event. The Deepwater Horizon was such a crazy thing that they've actually made a movie about it. You guys can look that up. I don't know if it's available to stream or not, but still, definitely just a crazy event. Lots of damage. It just points to the craziness of using petroleum for pretty much all of our transportation needs. That needs to change. We need to do something different. So the next one, which is probably a little bit more common to us, because we see this more being here next to the Mississippi River. Oil's hard to see. I mean, you can see it, don't get me wrong. The Mississippi is contaminated with oil as well, but we see solid waste all the time. I can't go to a creek or to a lake unless it's privately owned. But if I go to a publicly owned lake or a publicly owned, obviously the river's publicly owned, if you go down to it, you don't have to look very hard to find solid waste, to find some sort of material that shouldn't be there. And the reason for that is because you don't have to look very hard for littering. If you drive down the road right now, I don't care what road it is, you're probably going to see litter somewhere on the side of the road. Okay, like I said, I could probably look outside from the STEM building that I'm in right now and see lots of litter. Okay, it wouldn't take much. That's solid waste. Any of that litter that you throw out of your car or something like that, I hope that you don't do that. But if you do, that eventually makes its way to water. It just does. Okay. Right now, we just had a really heavy rain last night. If there was waste on the road, it probably would be kind of hard to find waste right now because the water just washed all of it away. Plastics are really light; they float. So if you get a big enough stream on a waterway or on a way of travel, a road, wow. That whatever waste that is, that will eventually flow down into a drain. It will flow down into some sort of sewage system, which will then collect. I mean, it's just impossible. It's impossible to avoid. And that is what has caused this Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which I'm going to show a video on here in just a second, so I won't talk too much about that. It's obviously just a large amount of microplastic. When I was a kid, it was thought to be a large island of trash. And don't get me wrong, there are large islands of plastic debris. But for the most part, most of that plastic debris, through the activity, the churning of the water of the ocean, break down into smaller pieces, and those smaller pieces then become part of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch as sort of microplastics. Sediment accumulation is another problem. Because of soil disruption, we are constantly moving soil, we're breaking ground, we're breaking up the natural root systems that protect the soil and keep it in place. And then, of course, again, we get water that rains down, precipitates down onto that soil and washes the majority of it away. This is a big problem in river deltas where water is going out into the ocean. A lot of times it will deposit that sediment in that process, and so you'll get a buildup of a lot of this sediment in areas like that. So let's go ahead and watch this video.
Scenes like this are a daily reality for the crew of Seeker on the Pacific Track. Some estimates hold that by 2050, there could be as much plastic as there are fish in the ocean.
Every day we see plastic.
That is why I want to show what is happening.
They got like with this net, so it's not only one net, it's many nets that are tangled together. Also some other very interesting items like this toothbrush was trapped in the net.
But what is all this junk exactly? Where does it come from? And is it really concentrated in a giant garbage patch somewhere out there? Marcus Erickson is an environmental scientist who has made it his life's mission to solve the problem of marine plastic. It's a global issue because plastic accumulates in gyres, large circular currents that thread through the world's oceans.
What's leaving land heading out to sea is all the single-use packaging. It's the straws, the bags, the bottles, the cup lids, the stir sticks, all this junk that we use once and throw away. A plastic bottle in California will get to Japan in about 3 to 5 years and come back across the northern half of the North Pacific. That's spinning mass of water as a gyre. Plastic trash will migrate to those zones and get stuck. We actually take boats out in the middle of nowhere, we drag our net behind the boat, and we count the plastic particles that are floating. Working with ocean modelers, we can get these regional maps of how much trash is out there, what it is, and where it is.
But answering even these basic questions about marine debris has proven to be surprisingly challenging. In fact, everything we know about the proverbial Great Pacific Garbage Patch started in 1990, when a container ship spilled 61,000 sneakers into the ocean.
Realizing that a lot of these sneakers would never come to shore, that they would just be stuck in this vortex. Curtis Ebbesmeyer, working with James Ingram Jr. at NOAA, they're the ones that came up with the term Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
Captain Charles Moore is often credited with the first observations of the patch, a constellation of microplastic particles that captured the public's imagination.
Captain Charles Moore had described the area. He said, look, I'm in an area roughly twice the size of Texas where I'm doing my transects, and that hit the media by storm. There aren't these islands of trash. They don't exist. It's more like a smog of microplastic particles. Billions of them, very toxic over a wide area.
Even when they become brittle and break apart, plastic pieces persist. Unable to oxidize or become waterlogged like metals, wood, or paper, all types of plastic are designed to defeat natural decay.
In general, high-density polyethylene, number 2 plastic, is the most common plastic in consumer use. And it makes your soap bottles, it makes your toothbrushes, it makes many of the consumer goods that float out of the garbage patch.
If we think in terms of all the plastic that's been produced since 1950, since it's a synthetic material, hydrocarbons, it's probably still here today on the planet.
Dr. Sarah Jean Royer works with Dr. Nikolai Maximenko and his team at the University of Hawaii to tackle the problem of tracking trash.
Most of the time we will find only bottle caps and not the bottle itself, because the bottle is made out of PET and it's sinking because the density of PET is higher than seawater.
Despite the dramatic amount of plastic the crew of Seeker has encountered, some estimates hold that 99% of ocean-bound plastic waste is still unaccounted for. That's why Sarah's team is working with the Swim Expedition and the Ocean Voyages Institute to tag and track the waste they find.
The SWIM are using 2 different protocols. The first protocol is a visual survey of all marine debris they see from the vessel itself. And whenever they find an object that is large enough, they will get closer to the debris, they will take pictures of it, and if there are numbers or lettering, they will share this information with us so we can track back the origin of that debris. The second protocol is basically to attach GPS buoy onto marine debris to track their movement in the ocean.
We go to the net and tag it, and then we take out this and it's activate the tracker.
Once the tracker is activated, it enables scientists to both improve models of how trash travels in the ocean and learn where to focus cleanup efforts. Most of the time, Sarah and her team can't immediately tell where a piece of plastic comes from, but they can look for other clues.
We need to use an FTIR or micro-Raman spectroscopy. This spectrum is matching a spectrum that is found in the library, telling us what is the type of plastic. It's probably the dream of all scientists to have a satellite and a new instrumentation to be able to quantify the amount of plastic floating at sea.
The entire life cycle of plastic is poisonous. Its manufacturing process depends on harmful chemicals, and when released into the environment, it soaks up even more toxins and transports them far and wide, including into our bodies. plastic can choke the ocean's ability to absorb CO2 from the atmosphere, exacerbating climate change.
Only 10% of the habitat is on the land. The rest of 90% of the habitats in the ocean are totally unexplored for the most part. Imagining all the jungles, all the deserts, all the savannas, all the Rocky Mountains. The ocean would be 9 times more. And the idea that somehow it could be 50% plastic, 50% fish in a mere 30 years is horrifying.
The ocean is in peril right now. If we don't do something that is going to reverse that in the next few years, it's going to be much more difficult.
But the situation is far from hopeless. Organizations are developing innovative solutions to clean up ocean plastic. Material scientists are turning their attention to new packaging solutions, and consumers are making more informed choices every day.
How can we use our science to influence laws and policymakers?
When you refuse the single-use plastics, it has an effect on your neighborhood, on your local watershed, and the ocean. Now, seeing the UN talking about it, seeing companies rise up and say, we're going to zero waste, to see countries make commitments to stop the flow of trash from land to sea, I feel optimistic that we can solve this problem.
So, definitely a worthwhile effort. Let's go back to it real quick. This was done by Seeker, by the way, which is a online publication site. So just to give them credit, but this is a real problem, guys. We use this all the time. I am a big proponent of recycling. I hope that you guys all recycle at home. Now, granted, I don't know what happens after my single stream recycling gets picked up. I really don't, and I should probably spend some more time kind of figuring out what the next step is. I use Republican Service, so I'm curious as to what happens with all that recycling. We recycle a lot in my house. We try to anyway. I mean, we specifically. I probably take out just as much recycling, if not. I actually, that's not true. I'd say I do 2 times as much recycling as I do regular trash. We recycle more than we throw away at my house. But still, do I think that all of that plastic that I'm recycling is going to go to the correct venue? No, I don't. I'm sure some of it's still going to a landfill. I'm sure some of it still finds its way to a waterway, unfortunately. But if you're not recycling, please make sure that you do that. If you live in Bethalto, for example, and I think a lot of the surrounding areas, you pay for recycling anyway. I know someone who lived down the street from me. Right when we moved into the house that we currently live in, I went and I asked him. I said, "Hey, do you know what day?" He was just outside, and I'm, being a new neighbor, I said, "Hey, do you know what day the recycling's picked up?" And he said, "No, I don't recycle." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, thanks anyway." And I walked away, and I just couldn't believe that this individual. I'm not giving him crap. I don't know. Maybe he had a reason. Well, I don't know what it would be. You know what? I am giving him crap. I couldn't believe that this individual pays for recycling. It's part of our sewer and water bill. Okay, we pay for it. It's not something that you can't pay for, that you can say you can opt out of. You have to pay for it. He pays for it, and he just, out of laziness, out of sheer laziness, they give him the other receptacle. You don't have to pay for that. But he just he wants to put everything in one bag and be done with it. That is absurd to me. Okay, we put enough plastic. Even the thing that we put our trash in is made out of plastic. Your bags, your trash bags that are in your kitchen or in your house, they're made out of plastic. We in our house, again, we try. We barely buy water bottles. We drink a lot of water from the faucet. I will say I do have one really bad thing. I buy a lot of plastic cups because I have a lot of kids, and it's just easier for us to have plastic cups. That way I'm not doing dishes all the time. So I do have that issue. I try to recycle those, though. I do try to, those go in the recycling bin as well. So, there's good and bad here. But if you are going to use plastic, please recycle it. If you have those bags, those plastic bags from the grocery store, ask for paper. That's a real simple way to do it. Don't get plastic. I also buy paper plates. Okay, but I buy paper plates. They're paper. If those go in the ocean, they will degrade over time. Plastic does not. It stays forever. So just a few things that you guys can do to kind of help out in this. You guys saw that water. It's disturbing. All right. This is the last slide, guys, and it just covers a couple laws that have been put in place. And it talks about thermal pollution. So thermal pollution is sort of has a grand scale where we're thermally polluting the ocean right now through carbon dioxide, through the greenhouse gas effect. As the Earth warms up, we've talked about this, the majority of the heat is actually being absorbed by the ocean. And because of that, the water within the ocean is going up in temperature when it normally wouldn't. But normally when we talk about thermal pollution and thermal shock, we're talking about industry that uses water to cool certain aspects of whatever they're doing. A lot of times you see this in power generation. So in electricity plants or electrical plants, you will see them taking cool water from an ocean or some sort of waterway next to the plant, and they will use it to cool their equipment, and they will pump it back into that waterway with a drastically higher temperature than it had before. This will cause thermal shock to the organisms that live within that ecosystem because they're not used to warm water. Okay, you see this a lot more with probably the biggest aspect with nuclear power. So you have to cool nuclear power. Most of them are cooled through water, so that water has to be utilized. But then the temperature obviously goes down and has to be cooled again. So a lot of times they're taking fresh water in order to do that. And when they pump that water back out into whatever system they retrieved it from, it's going to cause thermal shock as well. You guys have all experienced this maybe. If you ever had a goldfish, I remember when I was young, my dad got really sad one day because he was cleaning out my sister's goldfish tank, and he accidentally added colder water than he should have, and that goldfish died because of thermal shock. Not a happy day for the goldfish, but at least my dad didn't have to clean out the tank anymore, so there's benefits there. My sister didn't even care, but my dad was upset that he had accidentally killed that goldfish through thermal shock. But just a real life sort of example of that. So we do have laws on the books that try and limit the pollution of our waterways. Of course, the Clean Water Act of 1972 protects fish, shellfish, and wildlife in the water by maintaining and, when necessary, restoring the chemical, physical, and biological properties of surface water. And finally, we have the Safe Drinking Act, which has been updated and revised several times throughout the years. I think the last one was in the 90s. It set the national standard for safe drinking water and established the maximum contaminant levels, the MCLs. Listen, it's sad that we have to have those, but there is a certain number of chlorine and lead and arsenic, things that we talked about before this module, that are allowable under the law in our drinking water. Why is any degree of that, any sort of milligram per liter amount acceptable? Well, because it's just too cost prohibitive to take every bit of it out. Now, some of you are sitting there going, well, then I'm going to drink bottled water. I hate to break it to you guys, but the majority of the bottled water that you guys drink probably comes from a municipal source, a lot of times in New York and places like Michigan. They will have municipal taps that these bottlers will take advantage of. Like Ice Mountain, for example, or Nestle. Okay, those two. Ice Mountain's sort of the Walmart brand, if you will. Nestle is pretty prolific. It's all over the place. Both of those are municipal waters. So they're going to be basically the exact same as if you went to New York State and you drank right out of the faucet. The exact same water. The only difference is they put it in a bottle, and it's easy to transport. It's nice. Okay, but don't think that you're getting higher quality water because it's in a bottle. That's usually not the case at all. Okay, and even if they do bottle it from their own source, which is very rare if they own their own springs, a lot of times they still have to. They are still obligated to meet the MCLs that are of the country that they are selling it in. So they will meet the minimum MCL for the United States. So that bottle of Dasani that you guys love, it's going to still have a certain level of arsenic. It's still going to have a certain level of mercury in it. So, all right, guys, this is. That's just food for thought. Next time you guys get a bottle of water and think that you're doing something good, make sure you recycle that bottle when you're done with it. But this is all we have for today. I went about 25 minutes, so a little longer than I wanted to. This concludes the chapter. You guys will have a test, reading quiz, I should say, next time. I'll see you then.